An embalming workshop in ancient Egypt was one of the strangest businesses ever created. It was a place where every customer eventually arrived, demand was almost impossible to eliminate, and the wealthiest clients could spend fortunes on a service they would never personally experience. It was not a gold mine. It was not a palace construction business. It was death. For thousands of years, Egyptians believed that preserving the body was essential for preserving existence itself. The body was not simply something left behind after death. It was the foundation of a person's journey into the afterlife. And because of that belief, an entire industry developed around preparing the dead. Behind the sacred rituals was a surprisingly practical business. Embalming workshops had employees, supply chains, expensive materials, specialized equipment, different levels of service, and customers who paid according to their wealth and social position. A poor farmer and a powerful official might both want the same thing: to survive beyond death. But the difference between them was how much they could afford to spend before they got there. And owning the workshop that provided that service could make someone extremely wealthy. The first thing to understand is that an ancient Egyptian embalming workshop was not just a room where priests wrapped bodies in linen. It was closer to a combination of a modern funeral home, luxury service company, and specialized manufacturing facility. The process of creating a mummy required trained workers, rare materials, and a carefully organized system. The most famous part of the process was preservation. After death, the body was taken to the workshop where specialists began preparing it. The internal organs were removed, the body was treated with natron, a naturally occurring salt mixture that removed moisture, and the remains were carefully dried. This process alone could take around 40 days, followed by additional preparation before burial. The entire process traditionally lasted about 70 days. For a business owner, this created an unusual challenge. A normal business wants customers to return quickly. An embalming workshop had the opposite problem. Each customer occupied valuable space, required skilled labor, and consumed expensive resources for weeks. That meant the most successful workshops needed organization and a steady flow of clients. And just like modern businesses, they solved this problem by creating different levels of service. Ancient Egyptian embalming was not one product with one price. It was a luxury market. The highest level was reserved for royalty, nobles, and wealthy officials. This premium service included the most skilled workers, the finest materials, and the most elaborate rituals. Internal organs were carefully preserved, expensive oils and resins were applied, and the body was wrapped in large quantities of high-quality linen. The goal was not simply preservation. It was creating a final representation of wealth and status. A powerful person was expected to enter the afterlife with the same importance they had in life. For these customers, the funeral was not an expense. It was a final display of success. The middle tier was designed for people who had money but were not among the elite. Merchants, administrators, and skilled workers could afford a respectable version of preservation using fewer expensive materials. The basic option was available for ordinary Egyptians who wanted some form of preparation but could not afford the elaborate process. This created a business model that would look familiar today. Luxury customers created the highest profits. Middle-class customers created consistent demand. Basic customers created volume. The workshop owner did not need every person to buy the most expensive package. They only needed enough customers across every level of society. But the real economics of embalming were hidden in the supply chain. A mummy required materials that were not always available locally. Natron was one of the most important ingredients. Without it, the body could not be properly dried and preserved. Then there were oils, perfumes, and resins. Some of these materials came from distant regions and had to be transported into Egypt through trade networks. Frankincense and other aromatic substances were luxury products. They were expensive because they traveled long distances before reaching the workshop. Even the linen used for wrapping created a major cost. A wealthy person's mummy could require hundreds of meters of linen, carefully prepared and wrapped layer after layer. To modernize, it might seem strange that a dead body required such expensive resources, but in ancient Egypt, these materials represented something much bigger. They represented permanence. The more valuable the materials, the greater the statement about the person's importance. The workshop was not just selling preservation, it was selling the possibility of eternal identity. This belief created one of the most reliable customer bases in the ancient world. Most businesses depend on convincing people they need something. Embalming workshops did not have that problem. Families saved resources for funerals. People prepared burial arrangements before death. Wealthy Egyptians invested heavily in tombs, coffins, statues, and preservation, because they believed these preparations determined their future existence. In economic terms, the Egyptian funeral industry benefited from something rare, a customer base with extremely strong motivation. The question was never whether people wanted the service, the question was how much they could afford. But running an embalming workshop was not simple. The biggest expense was not always the materials, it was expertise. The people performing the work needed years of training. Embalmers had to understand anatomy, preservation methods, religious traditions, and complex rituals. A mistake could destroy the entire purpose of the process. Unlike ordinary craftsmen, their work carried enormous social and spiritual importance. A carpenter could replace a damaged chair. An embalmer could not replace a failed journey into the afterlife. Because of this, skilled workers held significant value. The workshop needed specialists for different stages of the process. Some handled preparation of the body, others managed linen wrapping, others produced burial items. Some workers focused entirely on creating the objects placed inside tombs. This meant the embalming business connected with several other industries. A successful workshop could generate income beyond preservation itself. Coffins, masks, statues, jewelry, and funerary decorations all became part of the same economy. The death of one wealthy individual could support dozens of workers, and this is where the business became truly profitable. The embalming workshop was not operating alone, it was part of a much larger funeral economy. A wealthy Egyptian preparing for death might purchase preservation, a coffin, artwork, burial goods, and religious services. The workshop was the beginning of a chain of spending. The same way a modern wedding creates demand for photographers, venues, clothing designers, and caterers, an ancient Egyptian funeral created demand for entire networks of specialists. But there was another reason this industry became so powerful. Death was also connected to status. For Egyptian elites, the goal was not simply to avoid decay, it was to demonstrate importance. A simple burial and an elaborate burial communicated completely different messages. A massive tomb, expensive materials, and a carefully preserved body told everyone that this person mattered. The funeral became a final competition of wealth. The richer someone was in life, the more resources they could dedicate to their existence after death. And the people who provided those services benefited from that competition. However, the embalming industry had one major limitation. Its success depended entirely on belief. The workshop was valuable because society believed preservation mattered. When religious ideas changed, economic systems built around them could also change. Over thousands of years, Egyptian burial practices evolved, and the demand for traditional mummification eventually declined. The workshops that once served kings and nobles disappeared, but the business lesson behind them remains surprisingly modern. The most successful businesses often do not sell what people think they are selling. A hotel does not really sell rooms. It sells access, trust, and convenience. A gas station does not really sell gasoline. It sells a reason for people to stop. And an ancient Egyptian embalming workshop was not simply selling preserved bodies. It was selling security, identity, and the promise that someone's existence would continue beyond death. For the people who owned these workshops, the business was built on one of humanity's oldest fears, the fear of being forgotten. And for thousands of years, that fear created one of the most unusual and profitable industries the ancient world had ever seen.